So I left my job 2 years ago. I cannot believe it's been 2 years. The moment of leaving my job, I still remember really clearly. It was terrifying, really, really terrifying. Was mostly concerned at that point that I was making a huge mistake, and this would all somehow come crashing down, but it hasn't. 2 years later, I'm still here. I've been a full-time investor for 2 years, still here, and I'm actually more excited about the future than I was at the time when I left. April of 2022, I closed on my first business with my business partner. My business partner had been a real estate partner, so I'd been doing some real estate just locally in the town where I live, Nashville, Tennessee. I'd got a good relationship with the guy that I'd been doing these deals with, and after talking, I told him what I really, really want to do is buy businesses. Did I believe at that point in time I'd do it? I'm not sure, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And then, I don't know what happened, but something about the COVID pandemic, I think something shifted, and I just realized at the end of that, if I didn't try it, I think I'd just regret it for the rest of my life. And I'm now in my mid to late 30s, and I didn't want to get to the point of fast forwarding 10 years, 20 years and think, man, if I would just wish I'd done it, 10 years ago, like I'd still probably feel the same feeling of maybe I should give it a go, but then I've got a decade left or 2 decades left of my life. But a lot of people ask me, how did you even find that first opportunity? Well, actually it took a while. If you roll back a couple of years prior, I had been looking, but just not very systematically, not very intentionally. I had a really, really busy job, really busy career, long hours, often at client sites, which means I couldn't do anything. So my evenings and my weekends were limited, and I had a young, growing family, so I didn't have much time to devote to this. And so, because a couple of friends knew that I did want to buy a business or was interested in it, I did have a few opportunities come my way the 2 years prior, from about 2020 through to 2022. There was always something not quite right. Either the partners were amazing, but the opportunity wasn't great, or maybe the opportunity was great, but I didn't feel peace about the partnership. So I definitely had a mixture of all of the reasons why you maybe wouldn't move forward. But then 2022 came around, and I just felt good about the business partner, my business partner. Now we're still together, and the opportunity that came our way. So we managed to structure a deal and did it all in one go. I think, if I think about the times in my life where I was the most scared, one was wedding day. People always talk about your wedding day. 2 was asking my father-in-law for permission to marry my wife. That was equally as scary as my wedding day, to be honest. And then 3rd is quitting my job with my wife, who is now stay at home with a young family, super safe, super secure job with a great future ahead, like really promising career ahead, to try and do this. But do I regret it? No, not at all. I'm so glad that I can sit here today and say that I was bold, I was courageous, I did the thing that I really wanted to do. And even if it hadn't gone well, I think I would still feel really good about myself that I actually did it. I got in the arena that so many people are scared to. So that was the journey up to buying the first small business. So how did my wife take it? I mean, she was really supportive, but was she scared? She may have been more scared than me, I'm not sure. But she knew, based on our years of marriage up to that point, that this is something I really wanted to do. So she was brave enough to support me and say, go for it. So yeah, I think definitely a piece of advice is to over-communicate with your spouse, talk it through. I do not recommend this if your spouse is not on board, because I think that tension could exacerbate and lead to resentment further down the road, and I just don't think it's worth it. That could really blow up. So as hard as it is to say, I think you have to have your spouse's full support before doing it, and you both have to come to peace with the terms that this doesn't always work out, but you can mitigate the risk. You mitigate the risk by just having a really well thought out investment thesis, what exactly you want to do and why, and what criteria do I need to minimize the risk of this failing. And then once you got the education, once you know what you're doing and you feel confident, then you just, at some point, you'll never know everything. At some point, you just have to leap. It's just so true. You just have to leap at some point. I've spoken to some really, really intelligent people based on the world that I was operating in and the career I had. I've known some highly intelligent people, and many of those people have reached out to me, and I've spoken to many. Sometimes the smartest people have the hardest time leaping into this world because they feel like they need to know everything before they make the leap, and that will never, ever happen. So what was it like after we closed on the business? It was like drinking from a fire hose initially. I was able to take a salary from the business at first. We didn't do enough diligence, that is a fact, but we were asked to accelerate the transaction, and some of the information we reviewed in hindsight did not make any sense at all. So I'll leave that there. But what that meant was, whilst the core business was strong, we had a business that had an unsustainable balance sheet. A business that we had been pursuing previously to the one we actually ended up closing on came back on the market because we almost bought it and then it went away and it came back. And so it actually worked out really well that this seller came back to us and said, "Are you still interested?" We figured at this point that we had already left the shore, and so the best thing to do was just swim frantically. So we actually said yes to the second business and closed on a second business, because the first business was actually 2 and 1, so that was business 1 and 2, and then the other one came back and we closed on that. So technically at that point we'd closed on 3 businesses in about 6 months, which is kind of crazy. We learned a lot from that first transaction and made sure that the second transaction, so business 3, transaction 2, was done a lot better. We paid a fair price for that one. And because of the overpayment for the first one, we were actually able to spread our earnings and our salaries that we were taking to actually live across the businesses, which made it sustainable for us. So that's my story. I don't recommend you pay too much for your first business and then have to buy another one quickly to then spread across. But how do I feel